Julian Morris, Channel 5 News. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for taking our questions. As you were outlining some of the, basically expressing gratitude as you were doing for all of these organizations, UNICEF, UNDP, and the World Food Program, etc. I was thinking, I was wondering what your thoughts were on this notion, this idea that since the hurricane, you have organizations like Samaritan's Purse wanting to set up, an outfit here because apparently they probably see the need to assist in different areas. So, what are your thoughts on that initially?
Discuss. I have met with the leadership of Samaritan Purse. We have no difficulty with any regional, international NGO registered in Dominica. As you know, there are laws governing this, and every organization, and I must say that they're not indicating they do not want to respect the laws and so on. So I'm not saying that, but there are laws and the processes. We have no objection to they getting registered in Dominica. As a matter of fact, when I met with the leadership of Samaritan Purse, I said, look, we can. That shouldn't be a problem. So I do not know where the issue is. Whether it is with the registry or where it is, but. From the cabinet standpoint, the office of the Prime Minister standpoint, there are no objections to that at all. But if any one of them is having difficulties in getting registered, they need to bring it to our attention specifically. I know I have gotten one or two reports from the ministry in respect to the registration, because there's one agency which applied to register, but they did not have some of the information required in the application process as required by law. So they need to pay attention to the criteria for registration. But from a government standpoint, we have no objection to that whatsoever. We are very, very grateful to all of the regional, international NGOs that have been present. They've been exceptional in assisting us in our relief and our recovery phase. So we'd like to embrace them in the long term. Okay.
And before I pass on the mic to another reporter, it has to do with the private sector. Obviously, they have suffered a lot as a result of Hurricane Maria. I was wondering, not sure how popular this idea might be, but what about, as it's Christmas, perhaps lifting the curfew or something? I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I think a decision on the curfew should be made in the next few days. There's still discussions going on among the competent authorities on either limiting the hours further or removing the curfew altogether. So I am hoping that within the next couple of days, today being Wednesday, maybe hopefully by Friday, Monday, that a definitive position would be taken on which do you go with. Do you go with removing the curfew altogether and putting an end to the state of emergency, because the state of emergency legally can only go up until December 31. Okay? If we're to extend it, we'll have to get the authority or the parliament to extend it. So, and I don't want to make any comment publicly to prejudice the competent authorities discussing and advising on this matter, because I have my own personal views on the issue of the curfew and the state of emergency. But I will wait for the competent authority to advise the state on this, and we can take it forward. But I don't want to say much more than that to compromise the discussion that's taking place at the level at which it's currently taking place. But all I can say on this is that a decision will be taken on it, one way or the other, in the next few days.
Kimani Sajan, GIS. I was about to ask about the curfew as well, but I have another question regarding private citizens and probably corporate citizens. Many persons have lost personal documents that you may have a cost to replace them, for example, certificate of titles. I was just wondering if there is any consideration for those.
Well, there's a process in law. There's a process in law that you will have to report if you have lost a certificate of title, and the law will operationalize itself and deal with this. Obviously, I'm sure that the registry would have copies of the silver title. If they have lost it because of water or whatever it is, then there are ways that they can have it reconstructed and so on. So I think it's a matter for, and I don't think there is any significant fee to get a new copy. You don't have to, no, in that you don't have to re-register your property. You understand? You just need to get a copy of it, and I think the fees might be, in the scheme of things, next to nothing, because the paper has to be purchased as a specialized paper. Because you see, what I'm trying to avoid is for us to waive all sorts of fees in the country, and then the state is unable to meet the obligations to facilitate those things. So we have to be very careful with this, very careful with this. So I don't want to give a commitment to the country that the government, because I'm going to waive all fees, and because I spoke to you about the tax revenue we've raised for the month of September, sorry, October, November, and the truth is it's not going to, at least certainly for the next several months, it's not going to be improved upon significantly. You understand? Because both the private sector and private citizens will continue to enjoy tax breaks and waivers of import duties in particular. So I would advise folks to consult with the registry on this matter. If the government has to take a policy decision so far as this, then we'll be advised on it. Yeah.
Dominica Vibes. In sometime in October, it was announced that the government will be hosting a national consultation on agriculture with local farmers, experts, and regional partners. Has that consultation taken place? And can you speak to the success?
No. The national one hasn't taken place. I know the coordinating committee in the Ministry of Agriculture has been engaging farmers at different levels. I believe that that consultation will take place in January. It's still in the cards, but they've been consulting the farmers at different levels, on our response to the hurricane and to the effects on agriculture of the hurricane. So that certainly will take place in the month of January 2018. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, PM, just a couple of questions for you. You spoke to the revenue losses that government has incurred for the months of October and November. Could you provide us with the gap in terms of, because I heard you mention that $1.1 million was received by terms of personal revenue. Normally, what would be the government's total revenue on that? Could you provide?
I don't have the precise figure, but the challenge you have with income tax, for example, you have the people in the private sector who will have lost their jobs, okay, and in the public sector, which is where you receive, you can guarantee of receiving the pay on time. The fact is, because we have increased over time the tax threshold for public servants, there is a large chunk of public servants who do not pay income tax, and you have another level that a significant chunk of them who pay less than $100 income tax a month. So you have those issues there. But I could get that information for you because it was part of the budget submission or projected revenue per month for each of the second priority or the next time. But looking at the numbers, it is pale in comparison to what we would normally raise on a monthly basis.
The next question has to do with the benefits to the private sector. You did allude to the fact that the private sector is going to benefit. What you didn't tell us is whether it's going to be loan or grants in terms of the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the source of the funds. There'll be maybe a situation where the government may have to contract these loans and lend to the private sector at a much lower interest rate than the government itself has borrowed the monies. It may be a situation where a partner may give you funds and you as grants, so you can manage the interest rates and the conditionalities of this loan. Sometimes the donor has certain conditionalities which must be passed on. So it all depends on the benefactor, the source of the funds that we will utilize to assist the private sector. Because the fact is, within the government system, we will not have enough resources to give everybody any amounts that they require. So this is why we're saying, from what we've been pledged, from what we're receiving from our partners, we will see how much more we can provide to the various sectors of the economy, to assist them in meeting the commitments and in rebuilding and restocking so that they can get back to the levels of employment which they had prior to the hurricane. But just to say, in the first step, we the funds that were already at the aid bank, committed to the aid bank, we have reviewed the conditionalities, the interest rates, and we're lowering the interest rates. We have a 12-month grace period for repayment on the interest and penalties. We will use certain assets as security. There were some assets which they already had at the banks, and the banks, based on the agreement, were not able to utilize those assets already at the bank as collateral. So we'll be allowing the borrower to do that once that asset is not completely is not completely committed.
My final question in this segment is: you spoke to the idea of the climate right, resilient program execution. Beautiful.
Agency.
And you hope to put some flesh to the bones. As to
We have been doing that. We have in fact done that. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. And the place where the conference most likely will be held, can you speak to the logistics of that?
Well, as you know, we normally would host such conferences either at the State House conference room or the Fort Young. The Fort Young has been compromised, and the Prime Minister of Dominica has been utilizing the conference room as his residence since the hurricane. Because, as you know, I was homeless. The Prime Minister was homeless after the hurricane. So I'm in fact occupying the conference facility that's where I sleep, that's where I stay. That's the Prime Minister of the country. So I joke with people. I say I am in a shelter. So and I have to walk out to go to the shower with my towel and so on to the next place to shower outside and so on. So contrary to people, I'm not living under this exquisite conditions, and and as a person who has the most stress in the country, who has to deal with everything, but
So you get a cool bath in the morning.
well, yes, I would say so. But the logistics will be indicated to the country once we start putting the plans for the hosting of this national consultation. But I also say it to be a broad-based national consultation. It will include all legitimate stakeholders in the country, who will participate and give a contribution in whatever way they deem appropriate. Yeah.
So I'll just ask you maybe two questions, Mr. PM. The issue of, you mentioned dredging, and I'm glad you mentioned the dredging issue, because every time I go by, you look at the level of the silt in the river and you wonder, but if we were to have, heavy rain, we would flood again. And I see right next to the river there you have, KFC. It looks like they're trying to get back in business, the market is open again. So, I'm not sure how urgent it is in terms of getting the equipment in there and getting it done before something happens. And so
we've had a serious challenge with the fleet of equipment we needed in the country, and also the types of equipment you have. So you may have some equipment, but you may have all of the same type and not the kind of equipment based on what I'm being advised upon. A company was able to bring some from St. Vincent, but even that they had to bring operators because we don't have sufficient operators in the country. So they had to bring operators and mechanics from St. Vincent and from Guyana to operate this equipment. Every piece of every piece of equipment in Dominica is engaged, from a bobcat to a D6 or D8. Every piece of it has been occupied in the cleaning and clearing effort. So I'm not aware of any equipment that's down. If any equipment is down, it has a mechanical problem, or the owner cannot find an operator. And also we have entered into agreement with another firm to bring in a fleet of equipment, and some of which are specific to the task of dredging these rivers in a manner in which they should be dredged, dealing with the large volume of galvanized material out there, because you do not have, for example, grabbers in Dominica to grab the galvanized and put it on the truck and transport it off and put it in. So all those pieces of equipment that we're taking to bring in to assist us with the dredging. But the anxiety level within the government is very high in respect to the rivers and the need for us to dredge it properly. But it's also going to have to be a continuous exercise, because once you clear and some rain falls and river comes along, it brings more material with it. So we have to dredge and dredge dramatically.
My final question to you is one that maybe you might say, well, why is this coming up? But the thing is, I've heard the Minister for Sports speak about sports here and there, but what do you say to people who would suggest or think that, we're hearing everything about other aspects of the economy and so on, but what about sports? Is it left out? So,
no, I mean, no, I don't think it has been left out at all. It's not left out. There's some playing fields that were not impacted by the hurricane at Benjamin's Park. There's been cricket on the Benjamin's Park. There's been football on the Newtown Savannah. The Vickers playing field is intact. The Thibault playing field is intact. It wasn't flooded. We had some mud coming on the Dubla playing field, but that was cleared. So the number of playing fields intact. The Windsor Park was dramatically impacted, but it's been utilized to house, and has been being used to house people from September 19th. Sorry, but assessments have been done on the playing fields. The ministry has a report, so I have no doubt that they could make a presentation next week on the state of playing fields across the country. But in everything you have to decide, what in the scheme of things, where do you place your priorities, what do you focus on at any given day or time. But it is not that these things are not part of the government's consideration or the ministry has not paid attention to it. I will say to you that the designs of the indoor sporting facility, which we started before Maria, have been given instructions for us to complete those drawings. We may not be able to start it within the timetable because we had intended, but it's important for us to have those designs and engage the public. And where do we place this in the order of priority? Considering how much money you have and the cost of reconstruction and rebuilding the lives of so many citizens in the country. So we'll have that opportunity to discuss these priorities and where do we place certain interventions. As you know, for the government, restarting or advancing the economy and getting more economic activity in the country is critical. Building homes for people is also critical, and providing temporary shelters for people. So there are a number of issues that are occupying the priority list of the government. But it's not that sports and sporting facilities not part of it. But certainly we can have the Ministry of Sports maybe come on Monday or Tuesday to brief the press in the country on the state of the playing fields in Dominica and the state of sports. But I think too that the various sporting organizations have a critical role to play, in getting sporting activities taking place. And I want to commend the Football Association, of course the Cricket Association, so that when people can have more sporting activities, small leagues and activities, then it certainly encourage the communities to take ownership of these facilities and do what they can to restart some kind of sporting activities in the respective villages and communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to this? Because we know that the Windsor Park facility attention that we need to place, because really, for us to, it seems as if Windsor Park fuels everything that happens in Dominica with regards to sporting activity. So, you know, can you provide us with some?
Yeah, the Windsor Park, for some of the reasons you mentioned, will be given some level of priority for the re-roofing and addressing some of the damage caused by the hurricane. So that, in terms of national projects, the Windsor Park is part of that. Okay, we have to completely re-roof the Windsor Park, and you know, we just bought a very expensive scoreboard that has been completely destroyed. We have to replace the two poles. The lights have been which have got broken and destroyed. So there's a lot of money to be spent there, but it is an important state asset, and will certainly require some attention, because it is you're right, it is the heartbeat of many activities, from Curl Festival to sporting activities and social engagements. Okay, that's it. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.